welcome to the Overprepared DM podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Nick.
And we have our lovely guest, Mandari, here today.
Hello.
Hello.
That's me.
Mandari, tell our listeners who you are and a little bit about you and about your experience with D&D.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I don't know. How involved of an answer do you want? Let's see. Well, so I'm Mandari. I do like a lot of homebrew and world building stuff primarily on Twitch. Also a lot of like mechanic design type things as well for 5e. Faye is my real name, so you can call me that if you want also. I don't know, I'm so bad at like stump speeches. I'm real bad at them.
This elevator speech has been great, and I'm sure.
I'm so bad at it, but I make things and they're cool, so you should come hang out and check them out. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, and I like watching Mandari's stream. Mandari actually has, I would say, 90% of a stream based around crafting an entire world. And I wanted to bring you on because you do that, and so does Nick. And I've done that half-assedly. So the conversation would be...
I think I'm always doing it half-assedly if that makes you feel any
That's
better.
fair.
That's the secret. I'm always doing it half-assed.
Sometimes you get the rare occasional whole ass, but...
Yes.
Yep.
But if it's your first time listening, this is a podcast that is designed to just be conversation style and give some people advice about how to not be overly prepared when you start to DM for Dungeons & Dragons. Because as we know, when all of us first started DMing, you get a little crazy. Some of us still do. Ahem, ahem. But Nick always starts off the podcast with the same question to all of our guests.
I do. So, Mandari, what is one thing that you used to do when you first started DMing that you do not do anymore? One thing that you go back in time and look at yourself and say, yo, stop it. That's bad. You're going to get burnt out in like 3 days. Stop.
Ooh, that's actually a really interesting question.
Oh,
I definitely still burn myself out, so I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that.
I mean, we all do at some point.
I'll say that, like, when I first started DMing, I think back now about things that I wish I had done differently, and I'm someone who is of the opinion that you need to know the rules to break the rules. So I know the rules of 5e really well.
Yes, you do.
And
can confirm.
Thanks, Jen. So when I first started DMing, I was pretty rules as written aggressive, of like, well, this thing didn't work, so it just doesn't work. And like, for example, so I think of this kind of a lot. Mm-hmm. This one thing that happened in a campaign that I was running. So players are really low level. I think they're like level 2 or something like that. And they were fighting against 2 shadows, I think. And I think that I had bumped them down mechanically a little bit because I didn't want them to die. I think that's what they were fighting, but it doesn't really matter. They're basically creatures that if they were in bright light, they would have disadvantage on their attacks, but this was happening at night, right? So I had a player who was playing a cleric, and they had inspiration, and they had, like, some other, like, bonus from something, and then they were also using a spell slot to cast Guiding Bolt. So they were using, like, a lot of resources for this one attack.
For sure.
And it missed. You know, it's one roll. And he had advantage still, and it still missed. And I was like, well, that sucks. Anyway, and sort of just, like, moved on to the next person. And, like, I talked to him about it later, and he was like, yeah, like, that just felt shitty. That, like, didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really interesting. But I was like, rules is written, that's what's supposed to happen, whatever. But I, looking back, wish that I had done something else. Not to say that it would have hit, right?
Sure.
I'm not going to say, like, oh, you know, that hits because I want it to, because that's not the game. But I was like, look, you put so much into this. I think he had, like, inspiration, too, or something like that, too.
Yeah.
So it was like, had spent like 3 different things. And so I was like, what I could have done is this thing that they were sort of dancing around for a while. They were playing around with the idea of having light in there, but they like no one ever fully committed to it.
Sure.
And so I thought about having, like looking back, I was like, I could have had the guiding bolt hit a tree and it make the area really bright and give the shadows disadvantage for a round until it faded, and then shown them that mechanic and, like whatever, and sort of like show that to my players in a way that felt like your action wasn't totally wasted. Here's a little bit of a hint for you guys without being like, here's what you do to get this to happen, sort of a thing.
Right.
And that was something that, like, honestly, I feel like was one of the lower points of my DMing experiences, that just, like, my players didn't walk away from the game having had a great time.
Yeah.
And that I felt like was my fault. So
I think that's fair. Yeah. I getting players to interact with the environment, but also I think we've talked about before, like making players feel cool in their actions and in the moment. Even if you fail, I always go through and say failing is fun, and everyone always goes har har, but I mean it. You failed, but you still can do something cool. So
yeah,
that's kind of where
for sure.
where I stand on that too. So I can agree that would be something in the past that I would absolutely tell myself to stop doing. And I used to look up the rules on the spot, which is fine, and people do that, and it's totally fine. But
I do that because I know the book really well, so I'm like, I know basically what page this is on.
that is fair. I don't at all. I'm like table of contents, 10 minutes later, I learn things later, and that could be you too listening. But also, it is okay to just say what happens and read the rules later.
Like, to make sure that you have consistency. So, like, if you say that, like, this is how something works, you either go, hey, guys, I'm not going to bother looking up the rule right now. I'm just going to say this for right now. We'll figure it out later. Or you just decide this is how it works and this is how it works now, and
yeah.
Either way you go, I feel like you need to establish that consistency for your players, because otherwise people can get really frustrated of like, well, this worked this one time. Why doesn't it work now? And stuff like that.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we've talked about that too, but I think in the moment saying what your intentions are with that is important too. And I think that's really the deciding factor. Saying something like, we'll come back to this later, but this is what we're going to do right now. So that in the future, they know they probably shouldn't try the exact same thing again.
Right. Yep. Communication's key. I mean, you really, if you cannot communicate everything that you're thinking, you probably need to work on that before you start DMing something like this. Because if you don't say that, they are going to get pissed, and they are going to come up to you after the session and be like, hey, I didn't have fun. And they're going to be like, oh, I feel like shit for the next 3 weeks.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. Communication is the most important thing in a co-op game.
So you said something in your kind of introduction to what you do, and you said mechanic designs, and I wanted an example of what you were talking, like what you mean.
Oh, well,
and I'm sure there's a lot of them because you've created many a thing, but
so homebrewing to me in my head is sort of like using things that have already been made and making your own like being like, this is a magic item, so I'm just gonna make a magic item. So that's like homebrewing something, or altering a magic item to be something else. That seems like homebrew to me. And then you have like world building and stuff like that, which is mostly just like narrative, like writing things. And then mechanic design, I think, is like genuinely coming up with new mechanics for how things work. So like writing spells, or like subclasses, or new classes, or entirely new death mechanics, or things like that. Oh, Fluffy Bean. Sorry, my dog's a borkin.
That's okay. They're the star of this podcast episode, if we're being honest.
She is the star.
Speak for yourselves. Speak for yourselves.
Whatever. When you have the raw charisma of a corgi, you let me know.
Touche.
Definitely am a fan of asking people about their memories when they're downed. So instead of it just being like, hey, I need you to make a save and then moving on, being like, what is something that is a moment from your life or your character's life that was one of the happiest times you've ever had? And, like, having them have a moment to, like, describe that and whatever, sort of, like, as, like, that life flashing before your eyes vibe.
Yeah, that's cute. That's a really good idea.
I have... The reason that my death mechanics are the way that they are, they're really involved. They are, like... There is so much rolling happening.
Talk about it a little bit.
Well, so... I didn't like how... once you got basically to, like, 5th level, death doesn't matter anymore. And, like, it's still a little rough until you're about at 9th level, once you get, like, raised dead.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, once you're there, it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you die, you can just get some money, resurrection spell, come right back, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like that. I wanted my death to have more weight, so... There are a couple of things that, and some of these I haven't tested out yet, so, I don't know how they'll work, in game, so I might need to tweak them a little bit. But there are a couple of things. So one thing is, I assume all damage that anyone is ever doing, unless otherwise specified, is non-lethal. The only exception to that is if you, like, are lighting a bomb. Because you can't really control an explosion, or, like, setting a fire or something like that. But, like, any magical spells, I'm like, look, you're a magic caster. You have enough control over your spells to not murder people. So I think that, in and of itself, making someone dying an active choice of a player's, changes how people think about like death in your game, because like it's just such a natural attitude to be like, oh well, this person's being the worst, so I'm gonna kill him and whatever, and have a murder hobo party, and people just don't really think about it.
Sure.
So making it an active decision definitely changes that from the get-go. I also have when a creature hits 0 hit points, they take a level of exhaustion.
Yes, that's interesting.
Because I was like, look, man, if you're rubber banding up and down and up and down and up and down, that's not like...
That's exhausting.
That is a harrowing experience for your body to go through. It's not, and it's always so, like, hunky-dory, you know, like, oh, I'm back up again, and it's honestly kind of comedic, which, like, can be fun for some games, but, like...
Yeah.
But, like, that makes it so if you go down too many times, you will just die. Like, on your 6th time going down, if you get brought back up 5 times and you go down again, you just die.
Yeah.
Like, your body's given up, man. Which I think is really cool. And then,
I think that's like, interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
As a mechanic, I feel like it could also add some intensity into someone's future actions on what they decide to do, since that's really in the hands of them and the DM. And if you provide all of these doors for them to walk through or not walk through, then they get to make that choice. It's super interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I also love rolling death saves privately. So I let my player know, because like my player roll them, because I don't want to like take that agency from them.
Sure.
But I asked them to like, you know, like whisper me basically, because I don't want the party to know how close or far they are from death, because they don't know. And like, as much as you try not to metagame, if someone's like, oh, well, you know, they've rolled 2 successes and no failures, so this next round we don't need to pick them up, because even if they roll a 1, they've still got 1 left, you know, like whatever.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, no, I don't want them to do that. I want it to be like, oh my god, this person's down, they could die at any second.
I think that's super interesting. I like that. It kind of reminds me of, people who go into games and are secretive about their classes the entire time, and no one knows anything about anybody, or at least what people want others to know.
Sure.
And I just find that super interesting. It brings a lot of role play out as well. That's for sure.
I think that you've got to be careful with games like that, though, because I've definitely seen people who are too, like, secretive, and so then they don't talk to anyone at all.
That's
and
true.
all of the conversations that happen are like, well, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. You tell me your secrets, and they're like, no. And then you're like,
I'm
cool,
going to tell you
good
my
conversation.
I just had a wonderful conversation with a friend. Exactly. I get it.
Yeah.
All of my players are like that. They like to they like to have their secrets, but they're very good. And this is about communication again. They're very good at if something comes out in as the person, as the player, not the character. The other players know their characters don't know that information. Sure. So that's just a skill level as a player, and keeping that and separating the table from real life. But that is player secrets or character secrets are so much fun as a DM because
I love them.
You can just throw things at that one player, throw things in the game that people don't realize until it's too late, and it's amazing. I love it.
For sure.
Yeah. Thinking about as well, like if you're wanting to DM a game and you're wanting to try to keep it interesting. I mean, I really like what was just said. All of those things, yes, but don't take on too much as well.
You can also just set the expectation that intelligent monsters are going to try to coup de grace your players' characters, and
True.
that death saves might not be the only way that your character can die. So
I mean, for sure. Yeah. Well, and then also, so like that's just like before dying, and then like after dying, like I changed all of the resurrection spells, and basically most of them is just like the verbiage of like you attempt to bring someone back because there is no guarantee that this person is coming back. And it's basically, so I originally was just going to use Matt Mercer's rules of like having a skill challenge, whatever. But I felt as if that was a little too, a couple of things. There's too many times that you can die, for like the increasing DC to actually like matter at all. Because like in the way that his works, and you know, obviously I'm not trying to like diss the way that he does it or anything like that. It's just like for how severe I wanted it to be, it just didn't work for me because it's like, well, you can still die, you know, 6 times and be resurrected that many times and then have 3 successful checks, and that brings your DC down to like 9. And it just like felt it felt too, I don't know, gracious to me. Maybe I'm being too mean.
There was actually...
It has to be challenging. It has to be challenging.
It does.
You think you're being too mean. You're just being challenging. That's all it is. That's really what it is. You can be...
You're just struggling. I'm not actually hurting your feelings. There was this death mechanic that I thought was interesting. And it was more of a story-based mechanic. But when you die... and I did this in my game, you had the option of exploring the people around you who are also around the veil, and maybe they want to come back. It kind of gives you an option to change your character personality.
Oh, that's super interesting.
It was very fun. I had one person do it, and ultimately, it turned out to be a mistake because they turned into a dude bro from this very cool, like, they had this backstory that they were like a Kalash star, and they had like a demon that had like possessed this paladin's body because they were like this sect of paladins that like gave their bodies over to these demons. It was super interesting. And then he was like, yeah, so now my name's Kevin, and I just care about working out. And I was like, all right, this could have gone very well, and it is still a good idea. But the way that it played out for myself when I created that was not as fun as I imagined it to be. But you know what? They all had a much better time and so much laughs around Kevin working out and everything.
I think that it depends on, like, the tone of your table.
Definitely.
And like also talking about that and setting that up like beforehand, being like, hey, this is the kind of game that I'm running versus the kind of game that I'm not running. Like, cool, if you want to play a turtle monk that's a, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, that's fine. That's not the kind of game I'm running. And I wish you luck with a table that suits that character. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't want to play with that, you know? And I think that that's something that, like, people often... It's like a taboo thing to say, and I don't really know why, but it's like... I don't roleplay the same way that most people roleplay. I don't like playing D&D with, like, most people. Like, one-shots are, like, fine because you don't spend an extended amount of time, like, playing with those people. But, I mean, like, and, like, even people who are, like, my close friends, it's like, I love you, you're a great person, I never want to play D&D with you.
Well, once you find that sweet spot of a table, stay there forever and keep playing forever.
My goodness. Yes. For the love of God, yes.
Even if you come to a table, or even as a DM, come to a table and you're like, I'm not feeling this, it's okay to walk away. And it's okay, even if they're your friends. And I feel like we've beat this horse so much, but walk away if you do not feel comfortable. Like, do it. It's okay. Your friends will be just fine.
There are tons of tables out there. Maybe not DMs. So maybe you might want to DM. There are tons of tables out there. You might find someone who wants to play. So if you don't like the game you're playing in, step away. It's okay.
So Nick, do you have any like mechanics like for the game that you have crafted that you kind of like to talk about? Because I talked about my weird death thing with the spirits and Mendari.
I unfortunately do.
Unfortunately,
I have my own death mechanic. Which I've talked about before. I think with Sumner we talked about this a little bit, but basically it's Matt Mercer's modified. You get the skill challenge, and then there's the roll to if you succeed. I roll to see if they come back. But you only get 3 of those in the entire campaign, and also at the end of the skill challenge, I give the character a peek into the afterlife. Because in the rules, as written, it says if the soul is willing, it can come back. So I give the character a peek into the afterlife and make them decide, do you want to come back? And there have been times where I've seen players like,
what do I do?
Yeah, they're like, oh no,
fuck you.
Maybe I don't want to come back.
I love this character. She doesn't want to come back now. What is wrong with you? And I'm just like,
I've done my job.
But no, I have a really, really complicated mechanic. It's actually helped out with prep a little bit. I have all these factions in the world, and it's all a D100 system, and there's these modifiers that they get for that the players, the party can like help with certain factions, and I roll to see if they succeed in their objectives in outside a game. So between sessions, I'll roll a D100, add modifiers together, and see if they succeed, and I let that control where the story goes. So I don't have like a planned out story in my head. I have all these options. So it happens behind the screen. I would like to teach people this. It's just, it's a lot to set up, but once it's set up, it's like, oh, this is freaking amazing. And I know, Mendari, you do game prep streams, which I've tried that before, and I'm like, I'll do a game prep stream. And I'm like, but you can't see this, and then you can't see this because people watch this, and the players are going to watch this.
Definitely things that like that I don't talk. Like there is something that when I start running a game, anyone who's like followed my stuff for a while, when something is like revealed that I have not talked about or, you know, like whatever, I feel like it's gonna throw people through a loop because I'm like, it's such like a very tightly kept secret. So I definitely have things where I'm like, I can't show that on stream, you know, whatever. But like, there's some things that like I don't care, you know, like I don't care if you see all of the people that work in this organization and who cares or whatever. Most people are gonna forget anyway. Like I'm not actively running a game right now, so it's fine. But yeah, no, I mean, oh god, getting into like you're like, these are really complicated mechanics and I still have my death rolls up and I'm like, yeah, I wonder what that's like. Because like mine are like percentage chances, so you roll percentile dice instead, which I was like, you roll d20s all the time, why don't roll something fun? Which percentages gives you the chance to go to like, you know, doing like 75% because you can't do like 17 and a half, which is something that I really like to be able to play with. And And then, and then you also, in this sort of skill challenge, there are 2 ways that you can contribute. You can either do offerings or appeals. So appeals are our skill challenge, you know, like whatever. It's like, I'm going to make a religion check because I want to pray to my God and see if they'll, you know, bless this mess kind of a thing. And then offerings are, offerings are like specific.
That's a word.
Yeah, it's fine. They're like specific items, anything from like a personal trinket to like a legendary magic item, anywhere in between. It just has to be something that's like a personal sacrifice.
Yeah.
And offerings, like more times than not, if it's like really, really something that's important to you, it succeeds. But it has to be something that is important to like the player. It can't just be like, oh, here's my dagger, it's kind of cool, I guess, take it. It's gonna be like, no man, it's gonna be like, okay, this is the locket that my mother gave me right before she got sick and died, and I've had it for 3 decades, and it's like my most prized possession kind of a thing. And then there's the same, you know, like you make the DM makes the resurrection roll, and if you roll lower than the percentage, the player's soul can come back, and if you roll higher, then it's lost, whatever. And then once someone has been brought back in that way, they cannot be resurrected again for 30 days. So if you die within that next month, that's it. You've got like a little bit of a cooldown period there. And then, wait, hold on, there's so much rolling. There's like a bare minimum of like 6 rolls, because then you have the spellcaster roll, and what they roll determines like how well the spell was cast, which basically like I have consequences for returning, and they determine like the potential pool of severity of consequence. So if they roll really well, the consequences can potentially be less severe. If they roll really bad, then the whole entire chart is open. So it could be fine and nothing. It could be something really, really rough. And then the player themselves who died rolls the actual consequence, because they couldn't blame me and they can't blame the caster. They can only blame themselves.
Player
So,
agency, I like it.
Yeah, and like one of my things is actually similar to your thing, Jen. It's like haunted or whatever. So like another soul will come back with them. And they'll have to deal with like that whole thing.
So is that, do you tell them what this soul is like, or do you give them any sort of control over what this soul is that is with them?
I think that I would build it like an NPC. And like, it'd be like, so basically when all the people die, they become a part of the astral sea. So my astral sea is actually like space, basically, like not it is space, but like when you look up into the sky, instead of seeing space, it's the astral sea. So it's filled with stars, and all of the stars are souls.
Interesting.
So great. Yeah. And then that's like a whole like wishing upon a fallen star is like hoping that a lost loved one comes back and like whatever, because like there's a legend that when a star falls, that's someone coming back to life.
Very cute. I like that.
Yeah, so like you go to the astral sea, that's where your spirit is. Someone might hitch a ride back with you. You don't know who it is. So yeah, so it could be, you know, like friendly old Margaret from down the road, or, you know, it could be Sharkoth the Destroyer from like 2 centuries ago. Who knows?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like that.
But that's not like the thing that happens. It's just one of the possible consequences.
Right. No, that's super fun. And it really just goes to show how much you can homebrew. Yeah.
I do so much.
It is genuinely intimidating, which is why this is a little bit more of an advanced episode to listen to.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Why are you sorry?
You're fine.
No.
I wanted to talk about homebrew. Here you are talking about homebrew and apologizing? No.
I'm just doing my best.
You're doing so well. And
for the new DMs out there, you can open up the DMG, take a box cutter and cut out all the pages, throw them away, and put your own stuff in there.
You know what's wild, though?
That.
I will say, for years, I never read the DMG. I had it, and I would look at the treasure sections in it because I was like, that's really all that's important in here is the magic item.
Sure.
But recently, I think a couple months ago, I read through the entire DMG on stream. And, like, it's actually got some really helpful, like, cool ideas in there.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. It's very good.
It sparked some other ideas, too, like the chase mechanics. Did you know, fun fact, all right, fun facts with Faye today. Did you know that there is basically a mechanic for chases in D&D?
I did, but I only found out after I wanted to do one.
Right, yes, sure. And, because I didn't know this for basically up until I read the book. And it is that, like, you can use your action to dash an amount of times, like equal to 3 plus your Constitution modifiers. If you've got a con mod of 1, you can do 4 rounds of nonstop dashing whenever until you've got to start making Constitution saving throws. I was just like, that's wild. That's really cool, and a thing that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
However, I hated that. It was like,
so
you take a level of exhaustion.
Please tell me you remade it.
Oh, well, I didn't just remake it, Jen. I made short-term exhaustion rules.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you've got short-term
I understand getting to 0 to where you can't move. You have to stop for a minute. But you're not going to die if you keep running in a minute later, you know.
Right.
You know.
That makes sense.
So I was like, these don't make sense, so I'm going to make up ones that are specifically for, like, doing strenuous activity, like running or something like that, in a condensed amount of time. So I made short-term exhaustion, I kept long-term exhaustion the same, which is just the normal exhaustion rules, and then I also have magical exhaustion.
Okay.
Totally different.
Super interesting. That's awesome. Do you, Nick, do you have any, thing that you've read out of the DMG that you've been like, nah, I'm gonna write it better?
By? Yeah.
Oh man.
I only have one. I'll go last.
That I'm gonna write. That I don't know. I haven't read the DMG in so long. I know a lot of the tables and stuff in there basically by memory, but I honestly don't. I can't think of one that I would write myself. I do like. I might steal that from you. Not gonna lie, for the short term. Yep. Now, that's a good one.
I'll tell you some things later.
That I'm looking forward to it. But I know. Just since you asked me a question, I'll answer it by saying this. One thing I did find very, very helpful after learning that DMing is exhausting it only if you let it be. That the tiers of play in the very beginning of the book might be the most important chapter or most important part of that book. Follow the tiers of play. Don't throw gods at your players when they're level 5. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, tiers of play are so great. Wait, okay, so question. Jen, before you do your thing.
No, you're fine. Tell me more.
What are your favorite tiers of play as a player and as a DM?
As a DM, all of them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Every tier of play has its my favorite, like, I have favorite parts of all the tiers of play, and I have my least favorite parts of all the tiers of play. Like making encounters when they're level 20, it's like, fuck, man. All right, I need 5 dragons and 8 beholders, and I've given them all these magical items. They're just gonna walk through everything I throw at them. But I do like all the tiers of play for different reasons. You know what? I would say level 15, 16, 17, those 3 levels probably were my least favorite levels.
Okay.
Because they're not capping out yet. They're not getting those big, really big abilities yet. And they just kind of, all the levels just kind of seem stale, except for Monk. Everything the Monk gets is ridiculous, but all the levels seem kind of stale there for a minute. and then level 20, everyone's just like, it's awesome again.
That is wild.
Yeah. But as a player, my favorite tier to play as a player, I probably 5 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Jen?
As a player, I think contrary to like popular feels, I enjoy tier 1. I enjoy sucking. I enjoy learning about yourself and like growing into something better. I don't like being good at everything. I think it's boring. I think when you can just do everything, then there's no point. I think it's really fun to like look to your friend who has +1 to wisdom when I have a -1 or something like that. And I'm just like, hey, you're better at this than me. I feel like you lean on people a little bit more in the lower levels. And the higher levels, it's like, who can do the most amount of damage at once to everyone else around. And it just becomes a little bit of like a pissing contest. At least it has in the tables that I've played at. Which is why my campaigns that I run as a DM are levels like 1 through 12. I have run one single campaign that went all the way to 20. It took 5 years. Which is not long. Technically, that's not long to get to 20. Like, I feel like Nick's campaign is going to go on forever because they've been playing a while, and I think they're only level 8, right? 2, 7, 6, 9. Okay. 9.
Yeah. Wow, those were such drastically different numbers.
Clearly, I didn't know. All right, so
level 31.
Perfect.
What is this? Wow.
I felt like, especially past 12 and even close to 12, they're basically gods. They're just really good at everything, and it gets harder for me as a DM to plan such intense encounters that don't involve some form of, like, celestial, giant, freaking amazing being that wouldn't be in my world, you know? So, and it's not like they can just fight it every day.
Yeah, I feel 100% the same way. My favorite levels of play, just in general, are from 3 to 8. Those are the levels that I feel like you've really come into your own as a character, but you still can't fucking one-shot everything. And, like, those I feel like are the most fun levels to play.
Yeah.
And DM for, because I'm like, cool, I can give you guys a challenge without, like, feeling like, I'm going to murder you all, but also without feeling like, oh, well, you know, exactly like you said, it's like, well, every threat every day is a world-ending threat. It's very, like, sort of superhero movie tropey to me. Which, like, if you're into that, that's totally fine. If you want to be saving the world and then, you know, having dinner with your family every evening, that's totally fine. That is a storytelling device that people have. But, like, my games, I like to focus more on narrative character growth. And so, like, my entire setting, most people, like, who are, like, leveled people aren't above level, like, 4 or 5. The really powerful, or not really powerful, but, like, the more powerful players in the world are around levels 9 or 10. And then I have, like, a couple of people who are, like, in the 15 to 20 range. But I could probably count those on, like, 2 hands, the amount of people in the entire world that there are that powerful. Because it's, like, from first level to about, like, 3rd or 4th level, maybe 5th level, you are the heroes. I would say probably lower than that. I'd say, like, from probably 1st to 3rd. You're the heroes of, like, a town or a small area. And then, like, when you get to level 5 and 6, you are the heroes of maybe an entire, like, sort of, like, area, villages or a kingdom or whatever.
Like a region.
And
yeah.
A small region, yeah. Not quite a country, but, like, a small region. And then once you get to level 10, you are, like, you could change the state of wars in this world. You are affecting big things, like, politically, potentially, whatever, in, like, world mechanics. And then, like, once you get higher than that, I feel like once you reach a point where your players can teleport wherever they want in the world, and you have to prep the world, I get real bored. And I'm like, all right, cool. We are wrapping up in the next couple of levels. By like 11 or 12, maybe we'll make it to 14. But like, I only want to play a game where I save the world like once, and then I've done it, and then I'm like, cool.
The world is saved.
Yep. I'm like, cool, we did it. Great, you know.
Oh man, I played a campaign where there was constant one-upping. It was not like from the players, but like the DM, like we would go and we would save the world essentially, and then that was just one level to this actual overarching thing, and eventually
this is the real plot to destroy the world. And
and the world was over a lot, which is fine. It's fine, and it makes a good game. I had fun. It was a really good time. When I was DMing, though, I had an overarching plot that ended. I feel like some people may feel forced to keep a game going when it could have naturally ended at that point because they want the players to get to a higher level. But you don't have to.
But like,
if
why?
They saved the world and they did your story's over. Let's do a new one.
Yep.
And if they're like, hey, I wish in this story we got to level 12, we got to level 15, I'd be like, okay, well, let's, in this new one, I'll make the intention for that, and then you just make it harder, and it's always fun to play new stories. But also, long campaigns are few and far between that go on for years and years, so.
Yep. That's the other thing, is that it's so much easier to find a game and maintain a game for early levels. Unless you're starting at, like, level 5. Like, when I first started DMing, too, I was like, I don't want to DM for anyone under level 5. So I'm going to get my party at level 5 real quick, or I'm going to start them at level 5, and then we're going to go from there. And as I sort of learned more about the game, I was like, that's dumb. That's dumb. Low-level play is so good. Like, some of my favorite things about D&D is, like, how traveling from one place to another is harrowing, which is why people don't do it. Like, most people hang out in their homes and, like, maybe travel twice in their lives to a faraway place. And by far away, I mean, like, a 3-hour walk as opposed to, like, an hour-long walk to, you know, a neighboring village or whatever. And it's like, we're going to the big city, so it's gonna take us half a day's journey to get there. And you go, you know, like 3 or 4 times in your whole life, and that's what you do. So for adventurers to be doing that, I'm like, look, man, there's a reason that people don't do this a lot. Like, it is, like, surviving just the world is challenging. There are things around every corner that can kill you or wear you down or whatever. And then I also love campfire talks.
They're the best.
Yes.
Like two people being like, all right, who's taking watch right now? It's like, you two? Great. Cool. So now you've got some time.
I don't know how you guys do campfire talks, and it's not a mechanic of D&D, but what I do for campfire talks, and we've done it live on stream, and people have always talked about how much they love it as players, as viewers, as everybody. I have literally said almost verbatim, like, and the conversation falls on this. And then each player goes around in character, they talk about this topic from their life, from adventures, whatever. It gets them more into their character, and it gets them thinking about how their character would act, what they think, what their memories are, all sorts of things. And ultimately, it is a nothing but positive. One time...
Have you, Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. One time we did a campfire talk that ended in all of them getting up and learning, like, a character's native dance. It was so interesting and fun and cute, and I was like, I love this. This is great.
It's so sweet. I love that.
Yeah.
Have you ever done 2 truths and a lie in game?
No.
It is wild. It is so fun.
That is very fun.
My players did it on their own, and it was ridiculous. I forgot what episode it was, but they one of the players, one of the characters brought it up, and they all were in character. One of them did not do it because her character's does not. She was like, "No, this is dumb."
Sure.
You know, but it was hilarious because they kept doing it, and she kept interacting. But yeah, no, it's actually a great role play tool.
So, as DMs, when you start a new campaign, are there any questions or things that you ask for from your players about their characters before you start playing?
Yes. I have
Yes.
a very long list of questions, but most of them specifically are for them to think about their characters. It's not like I require this by this due date. It's more
Sure.
of like a list of questions of like
Like
who was your best friend? What did you do with your best friend? Why were they your best friend? What was the event that you knew you were in love with this person? What did your mom do? How'd she get that job? How'd you guys move to the place? Have you lived there your whole life? So just like questions, like the mundane things that you have already lived in your life to the day where you walked to play this D&D game. I'm going to be asking you, what did you go to school? Did you have a tutor? Did you go out and learn by... Did you go out and learn by experience? Just little things, and it gets them thinking about their character's personality, too. I feel like it helps. I have a couple people who play very samey types of characters every time they play. They're always the shy rogues who are secretive. I learned. This is an excuse to not flesh out a personality for your character.
Yeah.
So, it's okay to be a shy rogue, and it's okay to be an edgelord, and it's okay to have the tragic backstory of your parents dying, but let's flush it out.
It's also, but here's the thing though, it's not okay to play Batman in your TTRPG co-op game where Batman's like, I work alone and I don't talk to people, and it's like, cool, why are you traveling with this party?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
why are you here?
If you're gonna play D&D, be cooperative.
Yeah, if you want to
yeah.
be on your own, then why is your character in the party? And it's totally fine if you normally work alone and you have a reason why you're with them, but like you gotta have a reason why you're with them. And if that reason goes away, then you should too.
Yes.
And like
Unless,
it's okay to be like, it's okay to also be like, you know what, I'm not feeling this character anymore. I'm gonna like say that this character leaves and then bring in a new one. Like I think that people are always scared to do that, and like there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, your player wants to leave. Not their character wants to leave. Your player wants their character to leave. That's fine. I feel like writing in and out characters is so easy.
It's very easy.
To me.
I think it depends on where they are.
That's
if
true.
they're in a dungeon that is 200 feet underground and they're gonna be there for a while, you're like, well, I guess maybe there's someone else in this dungeon, I guess, who's by themselves and have managed not to die. Don't know how that works, but that's okay, I guess. It's fine.
Yeah, that's happened to me too. I feel like I've written out characters easily. I've had them go to jail indefinitely. I've had them,
Writing out
it's
characters
easy.
is easy. You can always just kill someone. Like, oh
That's
no,
true.
rocks fall, you die. Like,
Yes.
it's eternally easy to like write off a
Writing in,
character.
Yeah, and letting your players know that like they can tell you when they want to take characters out of the game. Maybe chat with them about like, hey, can you play them until we're done with this dungeon, and then we can try to write something in the story. Or if they're like, no, I hate it, then yeah, you can have an extra room in the dungeon where this person has been lodged in there, but then you have to like help them figure out how and why they'd be there.
Or you just go, hey man, you can either like take a couple sessions off, or you can help me play the monsters. Like,
Yeah.
you can like. I don't have a natural point to bring you in, but I still want you to be able to play. So let's figure out something that, like, you know, I'm struggling with this character's motivations for why they have made this dungeon. Why don't you help me with that? You know, like that kind of a thing.
Work with your players on it too. They might come up with something that you didn't think of. And this,
Oh yeah.
I am totally tooting my own horn here, because once I had to leave a campaign because work schedules changed. I had to leave a campaign. I came to DM. I was like, "Hey, man, I want this to be impactful. I don't want my character to just like walk off into the sunset." But so we came up with this idea of this evil god marking him, and the mark grew for the weeks that I could still play, and the other players were aware of it, and they knew that something was happening to this character. And the last day I was there, the last day I was in the campaign, the DM and I started off by role-playing the session of my character talking to this god. And then the god just said, well, it's time. Are you ready? I said, all right, let's do this. And my DM got up. I walked over to the DM chair and I sat down, and they had to fight a level 20 version of my character.
That's fun.
Cool.
So many tears, so many, like, it was such an amazing ending for that character, because he was dark. He was really dark, but not like edgelord, but just like really, really dark. And the way he ended, and it
feels good, yeah.
Well, and that's like
that
heartbreaking
impact.
also. And like for me, I want you, whether I'm the DM or the player, I'm like, rip my heart out. Now's the time. Like,
Yes.
please make me openly weep at this game, because that's how you know it's that good shit. Nick, did you have any questions that you ask your players before playing?
Yeah, so I think it was Xanathar's Guide to Everything. When that came out, there were a series of really good questions that it had in that pertained to each class. I use those. I don't have like a list that I ask. I have little session zeros with each of my players, and I sit down and I ask them, like, okay, do they have parents? We talk. First, what's your theme of this character? And if they bring me race class, okay, cool. Well, here's how these fit into this world. Let's go from there. But sometimes they'll bring me like, I want to play an orphan twin. It's like, okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Who's the twin? It's this other player. Okay, well, let's bring her in too, so we can talk to her as well.
I love playing twins in game. It's hard, but if you've got the right people.
So the twins in my game right now are halflings, ghostwise halflings.
Oh
so
my god!
They have that 30-foot.
That twin telepathy.
Yes. And
that is so cute.
That is literally exactly what me and my friend James did.
They are agents of chaos, and they break everything in my game. Because one's a wizard, and she just doesn't want to do anything that everyone else wants to do, and it's hilarious. The other one's a monk, and she just kills everything that moves. So
I was a monk. I was a rogue monk.
I love them. They're awesome. They're
My
awesome.
twin was a cleric. Well, but this was really fun to do too. At the beginning of that game, we went to our DM, because like me and James were really good friends, and like we already sort of had like those vibes of like saying the exact same things, and then also this was really weird and very unintentional, but like we would do the same motions a lot. Like you could see it happen a lot on stream. People would clip it of us like going like this, like covering our mouths at the same time, or like leaning and laughing at the same time, like in sync. Was really weird. But we went to our DM and we were like, hey, one of us is not our parents' kid, and we don't know which one it is. There you go.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun.
It was so good. It was so fun. That campaign was wild.
I do, actually, that reminded me of a question that I do ask my players is, like, what is a secret that you have? Or what is something that your character doesn't know?
Yep, that is one of the questions that I have too.
But also not the answer to the question that they don't know. It is something that they are actually trying to find out and want you to write in.
Sure.
Sometimes
Yeah,
I'll get the answer to the question and I'm just like, well, now I feel pressured to
do it,
like provide this thing that I don't know. So it's all about communication and things like that. But my goodness.
Yeah, I do that same thing though. Like I've got 4 things that are like the main things. 3 of them are questions, and then one of them is just sort of like a general statement. And that one is like, you need to have a goal. You need to have a short-term actionable goal. You can have a long-term goal of like, yeah, they want to have a house and be happy and tra-la-la. But like one is something that they're actively trying to do right now. And that could be, like, oh, I'm on the search for a long-lost monster that people may or may not believe is real or whatever. Or it could be like, I'm trying to get revenge because someone killed my best friend or whatever. Whatever it is,
right? You
need to have that. And then I have the secret question, which it can be a serious secret or it can be not serious. So it could be like, I've murdered someone in the city and I'm actually like wanted there. Or it could be like, yeah, one time I stole a button from my neighbor and I still have it in my pocket. It's just like something that you don't really want to tell people that, but like, yeah, it could come up. And then
that can really set the tone for the character for sure.
Yeah. Like that's something that it's like, what is information that your character has that you're not openly wanting to share with people. Again, it doesn't have to be anything super serious, but it can be. And you know, it's sort of, it can be anywhere in between those two severities as well. One person of importance, so either a sibling or a parent, or like, you know, maybe your bookie or someone that, you know, you owe money to, or it doesn't have to be like a positive relationship. It just has to be an important player in your life. And then a scar, a tattoo, or a birthmark, and potentially a story to go behind, like why you have that or like how you got it. Those are the main things. So I'm like, those are really simple, and a lot of the time people will do them as little throwaway things, and then they'll be really impactful later on, which is what I like.
Definitely. Yeah. And having questions for your players in general is helpful to the player, but it's also helpful to you as a DM, because it's all for me. If someone brings in like something super kooky, then you can sit and think and write out something impactful for the player, or just fun for you to write.
Right, exactly.
Like someone comes and finds the button that fell out of their pants, and this is my button. I lost this button 10 years ago.
You're like, oh, I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly.
And then your friends are like, yo, bro, you okay? And you're like, fuck, I've had that button for so long. And you're like, rubbing your pocket where it used to be.
Exactly. Jeez. Well, we've talked about so much in 1 hour. We've talked about mechanics, specifically death mechanics. We've talked about tiers of play, campfire chats, questions for your players, writing in and out characters. Is there one solid piece of advice that you wish you could give a brand new DM? It always puts everyone on the spot, but...
Well, the thing is that I know what I would say, but you said that Sumner said it last week, and so I'm like, well...
We could repeat ourselves, but I also feel like if we repeat ourselves too much,
Sure. Well, I'm trying to think of, I mean, like, if something had come up in conversation, I would have been like, oh, yes, obviously this thing is very important. And I think that, like I was talking about earlier, sort of leaning more into, like, the rule of cool of everyone being able to, like, making sure that everyone has a fun time, because it's a game, and you're playing a game, and it's supposed to be fun. Even when it breaks your heart, and you're all holding each other, weeping around a table, it's still a fun game. You know, it's still like an enjoyable experience.
I want to go home and tell my partner I cried today, but it was great.
Yeah. You're like, well, I've been traumatized, but in like a really good way.
I'm happy, but I'm sad.
Yeah. So like, I think that is the most important thing, and can get lost behind so many things, either like holding too tightly to mechanics or holding too tightly to like what you wanted to happen. I know a lot of people who have been like, they wrote a book and they were like, I want to run a D&D game in the book world that I've written. And I don't inherently think that there's anything wrong with that. It's like, you know, it's basically like world building. You've already done a lot of story crafting and like lore for like the world that is there. That's totally fine. The issue that I've seen in every single one of those games, every single one, is that their plot of their book happened a very specific way. And they are like, no matter what, that is the plot that is going to happen. And so even if the characters make all the choices that say B, the DM goes, but A happens. And that like just like feels bad. And feels like no matter what you do, and it's all about taking agency away from the players, which like I am not ever a fan of.
Yeah.
And it's saying like, no matter what you do, no matter what your actions are, this is going to happen. What I want to happen is going to happen regardless. And I think that is a pitfall that a lot of early DMs fall into.
Well, let's talk about that too for a second, because have a suggestion if you're listening, and maybe you have a book or something you want to play with your players. If it starts going like a completely different direction, just make it a little tiny fun subplot of this book. So that you play this story again, maybe with the same players. You can bring in some fun extra stuff that you did last campaign, and you're playing the same game. Maybe you're not the one who saved the world in this book, but maybe they're the ones that saved the farm over here that the new players are passing by. So you can bring back fun things, but you can play a story so many different ways. And maybe they aren't playing the main characters of your book, but they're playing the main characters of their story. So
yeah. And, like, when it really boils down to it, D&D is cooperative storytelling. And what that means is that just because... I think that people get really caught up in, like, I'm the DM, I'm the narrator, I'm the storyteller. And it's like, no.
No.
You are all telling a story together.
You are the story facilitator, not the storyteller. Yeah.
If you want to take a break and do some team building, play a game of Fiasco, which is a DM-less game. It's about a 2-hour experience where you tell a story together, and you determine with each other whether the story is going well or bad, and then you move forward, and it's really fun. But it just kind of gets you out of the DM mindset, and I implore you to look up one of my favorite tabletop games.
And there is a perfect example of what we're talking about in D&D history. This might be controversial.
Oh.
I love Dragonlance.
Okay.
The novels.
Yeah.
Dragonlance, the setting, the module, the one that came out years and years ago, it is what we're talking about. You have these characters to choose from, and you are playing these things that are happening no matter what. You might as well just read the damn novels, because that's what's going to happen in your game.
That's true.
That's what you kind of want to avoid as a DM, because maybe you don't want your dwarf to have a heart attack in the back of a dragon in the middle of a dragon fight.
True.
Yeah, it's like I said, it might be controversial. I'm sorry for all you Dragonlance people out there. I love Dragonlance. The novels. The way the game is played is different now. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that, like, one of the best things also is, like, when you have game night, don't always play D&D. Like,
yes.
It's so important. I don't know if this is true. Okay, so citation needed. But I have heard that there was like a study or something done that teams work best after they have spent 40 hours of time together working together. And looking back on basically any game I've ever played in, that has always been consistently true. It always feels a little bit rough starting out. You know, you're figuring out new characters, you're figuring out playing with these new people, you know, like whatever. And then around session like 9 or 10, you like really hit your stride and you're like, yeah, let's go. We know who we are and blah 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 blah. And that, I mean, if you're me and play 4-hour-long D&D sessions, is right about the time of 40 hours. And it is just like wild to see the change in dynamic and rapport that you have, like, as an entire table of people once you spent an amount of time just like with those people. And so, like, if you can play a night where you're just like hanging out and vibing with the people that you're playing with, like, even if you're playing a video game, if you're all just eating dinner together, if you're playing another TTRPG or just another tabletop game, doesn't have to be a role-playing game, whatever it is, helps you get more comfortable and familiar with the people that you're around, and I think ultimately just makes your games better.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. That's a great closing statement. At least hopefully. God. Maybe.
I got the last words. Good for me.
You did it! I hope your drive to work or whatever you were doing was great. And we will see you in 2 Sundays with another conversation about some more D&D. So we appreciate you. Thank you for listening to the Overprepared DM podcast. My name's Jen. You can find me on all social medias at Jen is Online, everywhere you can possibly think of.
My name is Nick. You can find me at EmoAasimar on Instagram and Twitter, and then Southwest Gaming Society on Twitch every Wednesday.
My name is Mindari, and you can find me on many of social media under that same tag. It is spelled Mendarii. I predominantly make stuff on Twitch, but I also make stuff on Patreon and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and something else. Oh, I have another podcast.
Talk about it for a second. I want to hear.
Oh my god, I do a podcast. It is the stupidest D&D podcast on the internet, TM. Where we have it's just like a comedy advice podcast, and we're actually, well, spoilers, because this episode's actually airing tomorrow. We're doing sort of potentially a rebrand thing with the sort of format of things, but basically, it's me and my friend Jonathan, and we answer really dumb questions about D. So not like, hey guys, what's your favorite D&D class, and you know, what characters do you kind of like to play? What? No, those are good questions. We want the dumb question. We want, like, how many peasants does it take to kill a level 20 character in one round? Like,
love it.
That's the kind of hard-hitting questions that we're answering. And our last episode was exactly about that thing. We had people write in equations.
That is super fun.
You know, whole thing. It was wild. So anyway, that's that.
Well, by the time you're listening to this podcast, that will have been out for 1 week. So I will post the link down below in the description to everything from Mindari, including her podcast.
I'll just give you my link tree thing. It's called Proficiency Bonus, because I always forget to actually say the name of the podcast.
Yes. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you hanging out. And
thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, friends. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.